Creating the habitat and the practices for the creative process to come through you is essential. It's like the prep work before you cook a great meal.
Ever since I was a kid, I've loved exploring. These days, I'm a creativity guide, a dad, a musician with a soft spot for salsa, and a startup founder. Creating has taught me some of the most interesting things about myself, so I started talking to fellow creators, incredible chefs, and artists, and musicians, not just about what they make, but what they discover about themselves in the process. I'm David, and these are those conversations. Today, I'm talking with the legendary hospitality entrepreneur, Chip Conley. There are so many places I could start introducing him, but at age 26, he started Joie de Vivre Hospitality Group and grew that over 24 years into one of the most successful boutique hotel brands in the US. Went from there to what was at the time a small fledgling startup called Airbnb, helped grow it into what it is today, and now runs Modern Elder Academy, the first midlife wisdom school. What really has stuck out to me from getting to know him over the years is how fully he is himself in all these different settings. He just shows all of his highs, his lows, wherever he's at in the moment in a really beautiful and authentic way. And if you've ever wondered how to fully be yourself in your creations, and even if you have investors, employees, all of that, this is a beautiful conversation to explore. Let's dive in. You know, coming into today's call, I was just revisiting the memories of being out at your Santa Fe campus and at that amazing retreat that still sits with me deeply today. I mean, the retreat led by Elizabeth Gilbert and Tara Rai was incredible. And, you know, but one of the things that sat with me the most was how much that place felt like home, both to me, but it also felt like an extension of your home. I mean, I know at the end of the retreat, we literally were in your home.
Yes.
But even the library, the way it was built. And so I find myself curious, you know, was that an intentional choice that as you built this latest entrepreneurial venture with the multiple MEA campuses, that it should have a sense of it being an extension of your home?
Yeah. What a beautiful question. And thank you for noticing. If you come to Baja, what people notice is that actually literally my home in Baja was where the idea for MEA came from, the Modern Elder Academy, based upon my experience at Airbnb being the Modern Elder to the founders. And so we ultimately built the Baja campus around literally my home. Ultimately, I had to move out of that home and build a home a 10-minute walk up the beach. But so the idea of home is sort of infused in the whole experience of MEA. And in fact, at the Baja campus, it's 5 homes that are all contiguous with each other. So the idea of a residential, the idea of like feeling at home, and then for some of our cohorts coming over to now where my home is now here in Baja, which is 10 minutes away, that's part of the experience. Now in Santa Fe, a little harder to do. You've got 2,566 acres. It's a very big home in terms of a ranch. But there's, you know, these little networks of homes and spaces around the ranch. And I have a home, a modern home from the 1990s that was an Architectural Digest. And so I invite people to come up and celebrate at my home with a pool party and hanging out there, partly because I like the idea of it feeling like home. Now, the ranch is more of it's a dude ranch. And so it doesn't feel quite as residential, but we do have living rooms and we do, you know, raid the refrigerator and there's definitely a sense that people have that, you know, in the dining room that you're sort of like, it feels like you're going back to college again, in that kind of way.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine, I mean, you've built a number of quite successful businesses over the years, and you chose to build MEA and you chose to build it in this way. And at least for me, in my own creative process, it's oftentimes like what I'm building is almost an ode to my inner child, like what my inner child wishes he could have done. And so I'm curious for you if there's a connection there between your inner child building this place that feels like home for many people and just how your inner child's showing up in this creation that you're making these days.
Well, you know, I think it's my inner child and my outer elder.
Yeah.
My inner child and my outer elder. You know, when I was a kid, I was born 5 miles from Disneyland in Southern California. And I grew up spending a lot of time at Disneyland. And so Walt Disney was a bit of a hero. And I used to, in junior high school, create drawings of amusement parks and that I wanted to create. And so the idea of creating a space for transformation, um, whether it's as a kid at Disneyland or as an adult in an adult version of Disneyland, which would be MEA, is really intriguing to me. The idea of creating a place where people can feel at home and feel transformed at the same time, which is an interesting combination. When you're at home, it can feel very stable and settled. But when you're in transformation, it feels unsettled. It's liminal. But how do you create the space? How do you hold space and invite grace for people to have a transformative, metamorphic kind of experience? That really feels right to me. In terms of my own inner child, I think I grew up in a family where it was very hard to be honest. Honest is not the right way. We could be honest, but we couldn't be forthright and transparent because that would be rude. It would be, I don't know. There's just so many different elements to, holding your tongue. Children are meant to be seen, not heard. And so for me, the idea of being seen and heard, and to be a great listener, is liberating because I found that lifestyle, even though I love my parents and my two sisters deeply, and I love where I grew up, it also felt very suffocating, or lacking oxygen. And so there's a part of me that desperately wants to be open about who I am and to explore that in a sense of wonder, with other people who are doing the same,
Yeah.
because I didn't feel like I could do that very easily growing up. So all of that's true.
Yeah.
And so, and I think the outer elder piece, the inner child and the outer elder, is to create a place where I am in as much of a wisdom seeking path as are all of you who come to an MEA campus. I'm not the guru who's going to just dispense wisdom. I'm going to be learning as much as I'm teaching.
Yeah. I mean, it's so special that you've created a place that you get to feel that every day. I remember leaving MEA and feeling the sense of blues over the next week of like, oh, I just want to be back there in that type of, not only the physical setting, but that sense of that community of sort of seekers,
Yeah.
but who also want a deep sense of peace, right? Not just the perpetual hedonistic self-improvement path, but a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And so it's beautiful that you get to walk through that campus and also experience that for yourself.
Well, it's a bit of a crescendo moment for me because I have, for 24 years, I ran a boutique hotel company that grew very large. And so I had that hospitality piece. I was on the board of the Esalen Institute in Big Sur for 10 years and used to teach there. And so I had a retreat center component to my life. I've always been interested in wellness and have for almost 30 years owned the largest spa in San Francisco called Kabuki Springs and Spa. And, so there's that. And then there's this content education piece that really formulated out of my experience at Airbnb and the fact I'm an author and I wrote a book called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. And so the outer elder, the inner child and the outer elder is like crescendoing hospitality, retreat center, wellness, and education in a way that is the first midlife wisdom school that is dedicated to helping people to make sense of who they are, what they've learned, and how that influences the curation of their next meaningful chapter of their life. So that's what I do for a living. I make love for a living. I say that also, because I help try to create the space for love to emerge. And if I'm doing it right, that happens.
Yeah. Well, and given that you're in a constant learning setting, right? People are coming there, they're going through retreats, they're having transformational experiences. I imagine you often find yourself at that transformational edge, right? I'm sure there's something that you are personally moving through at any given
Yeah.
moment. And to the extent that whatever you want to share, what is
Mhm.
one of those edges that you find yourself growing through right now?
Multiple edges. I lost my mom a month ago, after a long illness, so it was not a surprise, but the actual abruptness of it ultimately was
Yeah,
hard.
yeah,
My father, 3 days later, had to move into assisted living because they were planning on moving, and he's struggling. He's fallen 3 times in 5 days and has a completely black and blue face and stitches because he keeps falling on his face.
yeah,
Um, my partner in life, who's my husband, Oren, who I've been with off and on since 1989, is Israeli and wants to move, or is moving, has moved back to Israel because that's where he feels safe. And he's got generational trauma that is leading him to want to be in his homeland with his
yeah,
people. And that's hard. And that means we have to deal with, like, are we getting divorced? How do we deal with the financial side of that? In the meantime, I am, for 8 years now, I've been diagnosed with prostate cancer that
yeah,
went from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3. And I'm dealing with this, I've been in stage 3 for 3.5 years now, and it's just grown again. And so I'm just finished 5 radiation sessions, and I'm on hormone depletion therapy, which means that I'm, basically taking my testosterone down to 0. Um, and there's more. That's
yeah,
not that that's it. So my edge right now is, there's well, let's just say another one that's not just transitory, and that is uh in a world in which jet fuel prices have gone up by 50% or 60%, and airline prices have gone up, and people are uncertain about what's happening in Iran and in their lives. There's a real challenge with being in the retreat center business right now at this very moment.
yeah,
And so the last couple months have been very slow. And even though we normally, do really well, but that has an issue attached to it. We have to figure that out because this is not seemingly, this Iran thing is not going away immediately. And certainly all of the issues of, oil prices and fuel prices are not going away. Even if, everything was solved in Iran in the next month, it's going to take 6 months to a year. So for our prices to come back to a reasonable level. And so all of that is a lot. So my growth edge right now is to not feel the barrage of all of it at once. One of our faculty members at MEA is named Bruce Feiler, and he calls it a life quake when you have
yeah,
multiple transitions happening simultaneously. And so the challenge with a life quake is to feel the sense of almost doom when
yeah,
it's happening all at once, like you're being cursed, or the sense that you're getting everything wrong, or just the overwhelm, which anybody would feel. And I think I'm just trying to take it all in stride. And it's one of the beauties of getting older is you are less likely to catastrophize, and you're less reactive on average. Now, there's a lot of people who are very reactive at 80 years old or
yeah,
65 years old, but for me, it's more like taking it in stride and one thing at a time. And
yeah,
so I
mm,
am finding and using some of the tools we teach at MEA, our tools around transitional intelligence, TQ, the 3 stages of a transition, the ending of something, the messy middle, the beginning, and learning how to honor that and to do something with it. So
yeah. That's a lot of transformations in
yeah.
one short period of time. And thanks for sharing that. I mean, it's also been clear to me. I mean, you share quite publicly what you go through in life, and it feels though like this invitation to sort of say, "Hey, I too am a human. I too,
For
you know,
sure.
am going through hard things."
Yeah.
It reminds me too at the retreat. I remember right at the beginning, Elizabeth Gilbert on stage, she said, "Look, I'm never going to ask you to do anything in this retreat that I'm not going to do myself." And so
Yeah.
she would find herself moved to tears. She would find herself moved into discomfort because she was saying, I, at first and foremost, have to role model what I'm preaching. And I'm
Yeah.
just hearing that and feeling that a lot in the way you are both in this conversation and just more broadly.
Yeah, I think, and I love her. Lizzie
Yeah, Lizzie.
has become a real good friend. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to be a guru. I don't want to be on a pedestal. I mean,
Yeah.
she's had to deal with that more than I have. And her new book, really was hard for some people because it's so raw and talking about her love and sex addiction and etc. And some of the thoughts she had about her ex who's passed away. And long story short is it's just not easy. E- So ego will want us to be on a pedestal, but soul will do everything it can to take us off the pedestal.
Yeah.
Because actually being on a pedestal is um, an enormous responsibility, and it's a distortion.
Mm.
Because when you're on a pedestal, people don't see you for who you really are.
Yeah.
They see you for who they want you to be. And this is why the fall that sometimes famous people have when O.J. Simpson or whomever sort of falls off their pedestal, it can be ugly and painful um, to see that fall because we invest such a hero and heroine point of view on these people. And then we realize that they're just human like
Yeah.
everybody else. And so for me, just being human, and for Lizzie, just being human, it it means that we don't have to deal with the inevitable reality that we are going to disappoint someone with
Yeah.
something we've said, something we've done, etc. So being that candid about my life is just my way of doing that.
Yeah. You know, when I think about things that I've built, companies that I've built, that ability to truly be yourself fully and authentically in the context of something that you might have raised money for, you have employees, there's a lot at
Mhm.
stake,
Yeah.
is a pretty special thing to be able to do. And I haven't met many people who can just fully and transparently be themselves, including myself. Oftentimes, if I look back at things that I built, I could notice and I could name things that I was not fully showing or sharing about myself in those settings. And so it's just striking to me to think about you walking through MEA campuses, going through all the transitions that you're going through, and being able to feel at home yourself in something that is
Mhm.
also this thing that you've built. And is that new or unique for you, or have you sort of felt that through Joie de Vivre, through your different creations?
Well, for Joie de Vivre, so I started it when I was 26 and sold it when I was 50. And the last 3 or 4 years were really hard. I didn't want to do it anymore. The Great Recession was happening, etc. And um, the hard part there was putting on the happy face, Joie de Vivre, the name of the company,
Yeah,
Joy of Life,
yeah,
suggested something that was like, okay, I'm supposed to be joyful. We're supposed to be joyful. And I was writing books like about, peak, how great companies get their mojo from Maslow, about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and self-actualization. And so to be the self-actualization guru and the CEO of a company based upon the emotion of joy, when I wasn't feeling that, was really hard. The discord between that. And and ultimately, after I had a flatline experience due to an allergic reaction to an antibiotic, it taught me that I just needed to be just ruthlessly candid about myself. And I did that 3 months after. So in late 2008, when 3 months after my flatline experience, I, was standing in front of 60 of our managers, and it was late 2008 that the economy was just about to actually crater and just fall apart. And it was already doing. It was 2 months after the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, and so I stood in front of a group of people who wanted me to be the cheerleader, and instead I just said, "Listen, despair equals suffering minus meaning." And I talked about Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, and living through a concentration camp, and what we need to do to create meaning in our lives and in our work at a time where there's going to be a lot of suffering. and there may be a lot of despair. And the thing that's interesting between despair and meaning, and if suffering is ever present, which is a very Buddhist principle, that then despair and meaning are inversely proportional. The more you create meaning, the less despair you have. And that was a seminal moment for my leadership in that company when I could have that level of honesty with leaders in my company who were sort of looking for me to tell them it was all going to be okay. And instead I said, no, this can be a shit show. In fact, it was. 2009 was just awful. Um, and yet, if you manage people's expectations, another emotional equation, I wrote a book called Emotional Equations, is disappointment equals expectations minus reality. So if you actually one of the most important things for leaders to do is to learn how to manage expectations. Disappointment is the natural result of badly managed expectations. And so I was doing that going into a really rough period when I was going through a rough time myself. But by actually managing expectations, I was able to help people to see like, okay, we're in this together. Because after you go through a really difficult time, whether, it happens with soldiers, when they're in a battle or having gone off to war, you come back and there's a deep sense of camaraderie because of what you've been through. But when you're actually going into it, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And when you're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel good. And that's why our MEA TQ methodology of, ending, messy, middle, beginning is really helpful because it helps people to see like when I'm in the ending of something, that doesn't feel good. When I'm in the messy middle, I feel bewildered and lost and anxious. But on the other side of that, a butterfly will emerge. Now it may not look much like a butterfly because sometimes it's not always good news,
Mm-hmm.
but at least there's an element of there's a process that I can go through. So
So
you
how,
don't get stuck in the chrysalis.
right. So how did the people respond when you said, yeah, this is a shit show? It's 2008.
They
It's
were
bad.
shocked. I think they were shocked because I was pretty much a cheerleading kind of leader.
Yeah.
But I first started by saying, here's what happened to me 3 months ago. I've not been honest. Well, I was not dishonest, but I haven't told you that I had a flatline experience. Only 5 of the 60 people in the room knew that. And I was like, it had a huge impact on me. And
Mm.
it helped me to see this equation. And it helped me to see that, the last 3 months after having felt really awful, because I was the actual allergic reaction happened at a time when I was going through a really hard time. So it happened at exactly that time. So it allowed me to just say like, hey, this is what I've learned.
Yeah.
I want to share it with you and I want you to be sharing it with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Just the power of transparency and
Yeah.
vulnerability in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so at this point, having built a number of different ventures, what is your current take on the creative process? And that might sound like a big question, but I'm
Yeah.
asking it because for me, sort of the creative act, I think ends up being, for me at least, one of the most potent ways of learning about myself. It's like when
Mhm.
I put myself into the act of building something, every part of me comes up. All the fears, the excitements, the doubts, the
Uh-huh.
joys, everything becomes transparent.
Yeah.
And so it ends up being a really interesting spiritual path in my life. And I'm curious for you, having created a lot of different things, what's your relationship with your creative process these days, or how you view it?
Well, I love Liz's approach, which is the idea of that you have to be the conduit for the genie to come through you. Genius is not about, like you're solely got the skill within you. It's really about actually learning how to be a channel for something to come through you. And I'm a believer in that. But that means you actually have to create the space for something to come through you. I mean, if you don't have the space for something to come through you because you're overscheduled or you're just tired all the time or stressed, it won't happen. So creating the habitat and the practices for the creative process to come through you is essential. It's like the prep work before you cook a great meal.
Yeah.
Um, and so for me, whether it's, the affirmations I say in the shower every morning, the prayers I say in the shower every morning, the meditation I do briefly every morning, the morning hike or walk I do, the Sunday Sabbath, where I actually take Sunday off completely. I'm usually not online. I'm usually spending a lot of time hiking and writing and sleeping and meditating. Um, those are the things that create the conditions for the creative process to have its way with me.
Yeah. And once you've done that, so you've taken the Sabbath, you've done your practices each morning, and then you're sort of open as a
Yeah.
channel.
And things come through me.
Yeah. So it just spontaneously
And
happens for you.
and when it comes through me, I like better take notes.
Yeah.
Because I'm supposed to take dictation.
Mhm.
Like taking dictation from the heavens is not a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
It may come back, it may not, and the key is to be able to say, okay, I'm here and I'm being awake and aware enough to actually take notes.
Yeah. I love in the artist way, one way that Julia Cameron describes it is the difference between coming up with an idea versus getting something down.
Yeah,
And I always
yeah,
love that because it's such a difference of when I'm hearing something
mm,
strikes and I'm getting the idea down versus I'm sitting there trying to come up with something and
yeah.
the conditions to
Yeah.
allow that to happen.
Listen, there's a lot of responsibility in either of them, but there's just a whole lot of stress in coming up with something.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of liberation in letting something come through you.
Yeah. Mm. Well, Chip, I feel like that's a beautiful place
Yeah.
to end the conversation today. I appreciate you taking the time amid all of the transitions that you're going through.
Yeah.
And so thank you
Well,
for the time today.
David, thank you for the opportunity to talk, and I hope to see you at MEA in
Oh,
Santa Fe or Baja soon.
I've got to come back out. Maybe I'll do the Baja one next.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right. Thanks, Chip.
All right.
All right. Bye.